Caveat emptor or buyer beware is an often heard phrase. In any business transaction, the buyer is usually at a disadvantage. He or she does not really know the history and current situation of the asset or enterprise of the seller. Because of this, it is quite important for the buyer to do good diligence study. Buying a company is buying a complete set of largely unknown elements that make up the company. What may be immediately obvious to the buyer is the product being sold by the seller. But the buyer may not have a real grasp of the market, the customers, the operations, the finances, the people, the systems, the assets, the connections, the affiliates, the management, and the liabilities of the seller. All these elements need due diligence work. Here are several suggestions in conducting good due diligence. 1. The buyer must be very clear about the purpose for buying any asset or enterprise. 2. The purchase of the asset or the enterprise should be within the means of the buyer, or the buyer risks stretching his or her resources to the breaking point. 3. The buyer must be capable and competent to manage and operate the enterprise being sold. 4. The buyer should determine if the entire operations of the company for sale is good or bad. 5. The buyer should examine the background of the owners and managers of the selling company. 6. The products and services of the selling company must be evaluated as to their positioning and impact in the market. 7. The customers of the seller should be well defined, properly profiled, and correctly segmented. 8. The suppliers of the seller must be assessed as to their reliability, quality, and service delivery. 9. The seller's relationship with his creditors must be evaluated. 10. The buyer must find out if the selling company has any contingent liabilities, such as pending court cases, possible breaches of contracts, violations of agreements, and infringements of intellectual property rights. 11. The buyer must determine if policies and guidelines exist for the operations, finance, administration, human resources, and sales functions of the seller. 12. The records of the company should be well kept, particularly cash, receivables, inventories, payables, and properties. Caveat vendor or seller beware is not heard too often, but there are a few tips for the seller. 1. Don't sell your enterprise or your assets for a song. Ask around. Get experts' opinion. Make sure you get a reasonable value. 2. Don't agree to too many contingencies that could substantially reduce the overall price of the company or asset because of future eventualities. 3. Study the tax implications very well. Make sure values are not eroded by the taxman. 4. Protect yourself from lawsuits arising out of the sale transaction. Put in a lot of protective clauses in the contract. 5. Try to get the full value of your sale up front. Installment payments based on the operating performance of the company you are selling can be very risky. If you have to sell on installment get guarantees. 6. Be as truthful and as honest as possible. Your future credibility is at stake if you sell a company or an asset with a lot of hidden pitfalls. In any negotiation on valuation, the one with the greater bargaining power has a tremendous edge. The following conditions create good bargaining power. 1. Perfect or near perfect information about the motivations and situation of the other party. 2. Little or no pressure to buy or sell. 3. Sterling performance in the past up to the present. 4. The bargainer has many options and fallback positions in case the deal at hand does not push through. 5. Little or no downside risk if the deal does not happen for the bargainer. 6. The other party has very few options and few fallback positions in case the deal does not happen. 7. Huge downside risks for the other party if the deal does not happen. 8. The lesser the need for the bargainer to come to an agreement, the greater the bargaining power. The greater the need to come to an agreement, the lesser the bargaining power. In any negotiation, the bargainer must set a maximum and a minimum price and/or acceptable terms and conditions beyond which he or she would no longer want to make a deal. This is called the walkaway price and terms, or WAPT. The bargainer must ascertain at the very beginning, at the outset, what his or her WAPT is. In order to determine the proper walkaway price and terms, the bargainer must estimate the opportunity gains and losses from the deal and make the corresponding cost-benefit analysis. The bargainer must ascertain the risk of making or not making the deal. After this, the bargainer must calculate and compute for the upside gains and the downside losses from the deal in order to make the proper walkaway price and terms. To synthesize, we have looked at the valuation of assets or enterprises from several perspectives. We have seen it from the perspective of supply and demand in a competitive market. However, we have also looked at valuation from a purely subjective perspective. We've looked at valuating the parts of an enterprise and also the whole of the enterprise as a going concern. We've also looked at the replication value of an enterprise or an asset. We'd look at valuation for opportunity and valuation for distress. We have discussed bargaining power and how to gain better bargaining power. Finally, we have discussed that it's important to set a walkaway price and terms in any valuation negotiation.